In this edition of 2020 Daily Trail Markers, Democratic presidential hopefuls are releasing their fourth quarter fundraising numbers. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders tops the field. His campaign brought in more than $34 million. He's trailed by Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden. Meanwhile, Senator Elizabeth Warren has yet to announce her fourth quarter total. Several days ago, her campaign said it had raised $17 million and noted that it was, quote, behind where it needed to be. Let's bring in CBS News 2020 campaign reporters Jack Turman and Cara Korte. Jack is in Keene, New Hampshire, following Pete Buttigieg, and Cara is in Muscatine, Iowa, following Senator Bernie Sanders. And here with me on set are CBS News political unit associate producers Sarah Ewall-Wice and Ben Mitchell. Welcome to all of you. Cara, let me start with you. Senator Sanders raised $34.5 million in the fourth quarter. What is his campaign attributing that success to?
Well, Elaine, Christmas was 8 days ago, but I think for many in the Sanders campaign, Santa arrived this morning with that huge fundraising haul of $34.5 million. They attribute it to what they call an unprecedented grassroots movement. It's what we've heard from the senator since he announced his campaign in February, that this is what makes him different. Here's what's really interesting, Elaine, is that when you look at last quarter, Sanders raised $9 million more this time around, $9 million more this time around. And what everyone wonders about Bernie Sanders' support is if it can grow. Well, we saw this quarter that they raised $9 million more than last, but also on the last day alone, on January 31st, there were 40,000 new donors coming into the campaign, individuals who had never donated before. And so this is a really interesting quarter for the Sanders campaign. When you look at the money, the value is increasing, but also new people are coming into the campaign, and that is a very good sign, according to the Sanders campaign.
Well, Jack, Pete Buttigieg was second in fourth quarter fundraising with just over $24 million. What more can you tell us about what's behind his campaign's fundraising success?
Yeah, Elaine, that's right. He nearly matched his total that he raised, roughly $25 million in the second quarter, where he outraised all of his Democratic opponents. What's interesting here is that he virtually had no name ID and did not have a big fundraising email list compared to some other senators in the race and other governors in the race. It's also interesting, too, is that because he does not have the same type of grassroots support as Senator Sanders does. Buttigieg also holds high-dollar fundraisers, which he has drawn criticism from his more progressive rivals, like Senator Elizabeth Warren and Senator Sanders. And that's just something to take note of, is that he's been under pressure under the fourth quarter for holding these high-dollar fundraisers. But it's interesting to note, though, the campaign was quick to note that 98% of contributions are under $200, and the rough average contribution for the year was $38. So that's something to keep an eye on now. And it's interesting just to point out to see how these resources will be allocated with 1 month approximately until the Iowa caucus.
Right, just around the corner. So, Ben, let me ask you about Andrew Yang. He raised more than $1.3 million in the last 24 hours of 2019. It's pretty remarkable. His campaign appeared to outperform their own expectations. So what more can you tell us about that?
Right. Well, so that 1.3 was part of their 16.5 million that they raised at the end of the quarter. And it's going to be important for them because as of right now, they don't look like they're going to make the next round of debates. And that is obviously a big deal for a campaign that needs to remain relevant in order to be competitive. So what this money allows them to do, especially that last little push at the back end, it allows them to keep doing things like opening offices and hiring and engaging voters in these early states, in the caucus states, and making sure that his supporters are plugged in and that they have the resources to keep communicating to other voters that maybe aren't necessarily part of the Yang gang yet. The good news is that they saw an increase from Q3 to Q4. They can say that they're still growing. They have the numbers now to back up, that argument that the Yang gang only has, it's nowhere to go but up. Sky's the limit. And so we'll see if they can turn some of that positive momentum into a show of force on caucus night.
Right, because the debate stage right now at this point is so critical, as we've seen with other candidates. Sarah, let me ask you, former Vice President Joe Biden had his best fundraising quarter yet. He brought in more than $22 million. That still, though, puts him in third place in the quarter. So should his campaign be concerned?
It's hard to say if they should be concerned. Looking ahead, they're about to head into this final stretch in the early contest, and they need a lot of money with the online digital buys. They need money for TV ads. So they do want to have a stockpile there. He raised over $22 million this quarter. That is actually up from the $15.7 million that he raised last quarter, which was when people were giving serious questions about whether he had the funds to remain in this race.
Right.
He was asked about it today, and he did say they do have the funds. So it'll be interesting to see where those are allocated for this coming contest in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and then Nevada, the early states. Interestingly enough, we're already seeing some of the ad buys that are coming up for these early states, and he has put the most money of over $4 million in reserved ad buys that he has so far. Most of it is in South Carolina as the top one, and then he goes to Iowa and New Hampshire. So it looks like he's kind of looking past those, but obviously his campaign says he's still very competitive in Iowa and New Hampshire at this point.
Interesting. So, Sarah, what else are we still looking to see from the rest of the field?
It'll be interesting to see what the campaign cash on hand is when we close out the year. We know that President Trump has over $100 million cash on hand. He raised over $140 million in 2019. So we need to look at the other Democratic candidates and see where they're at so that they can move forward. Obviously, it's not going to be the same. He's an incumbent president, and there's many Democratic candidates in the field. What is something interesting to watch, though, is President Trump has the largest war chest when it comes to this race right now, and he also doesn't have to spend it right now.
Yeah.
So while all these candidates are going to be spending money in all of these states and running across the country, he can't really sit back, but he can also do it from a far-off lens and look at the race and spend money where he wants to, where these candidates are going to be on the ground running around across the country.
All right, Jack Turman, Cara, Korte, Sarah, Ewall-Wice, and Ben Mitchell, thank you all very much.